Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of 40 and Beyond. Now I decided I would just jump on quickly and have a short conversation, or well, I guess a monologue because it's me alone, about as the title suggests, work and travel from a parent's point of view. Now, those of you who know me know my daughter went on, well, some of you would know, went on work and travel this summer. She's been asking me to go on work and travel for some time now, and I was a bit reluctant because I wasn't too clear as to what the program was about, what to expect, stuff like that. So I decided to send her on the work and travel program this year. Now, for those of you who don't know what it is, it's like a cultural exchange where university students, once you're over 1 year, so you need to be enrolled in a university for at least 1 year, then you're able to go overseas. You apply through a third party. There are some companies that are registered that you can register through to go on the program overseas. There are fees involved. There are other things. Well, I'll speak about that later. So it's like a cultural exchange. You'll go overseas, be able to learn different cultures based on the state that they go to. And also they'll be able to work during that time. Now, some persons, based on my research, have said it has been a financial blessing for them and their parents. Some others, not so much, right? So my experience. So my daughter, I won't call the name of the partner she went through. However, there are multiple partners. I will, however, advise you, research the partners, ensure they are registered, because sometimes they don't have registration, and that can prevent your child from being able to go on the program because the companies are not registered. So that's one thing that I learned. There are a few companies that were not registered. They had a registration, but it had expired, and that gave the children to push back in terms of being able to go on the program. It took a while for them to be able to get visa dates because the partners that they went through their registration was not up to date. So yes, so research the company that you're going through, and what I found is that the fees vary, because you have some companies that charge like 1,200 US, others go up to like probably about 2,000 US. So research the companies, because you have some that the fees are really, let me not say reasonable, but lower than others, right? Another thing is that ask your children to research the jobs they're taking. So my daughter went to Missouri, right? I understand it's a good state to make money. However, my daughter's experience just was not the greatest. So where she went, she had challenge in terms of housing, because where she should have gotten somewhere to rent, it wasn't available. She went somewhere else, the rent was very high. So to backtrack a little, what she wanted, based on what she was told by persons who went before, is that it's good to get into a restaurant and be a server, so you'll get tips. America has a culture of tipping, unlike other countries. So that's what she wanted to do. And based on conversations with the company she was going to be working with, it seemed as if, yes, she would have been able to get it. However, that was not so when she got there. She was given other tasks to do other than serving. And might I say, racism is still alive. So she had to experience that. So brace yourself also for that, because I said it's a cultural exchange, right? So she went there and she had to be tough. She had to figure out how it is to deal with racism, as I indicated before. I had to be in constant dialogue with her, trying to impart on her what I would have built over years, the resilience I would have built over years in dealing with different types of persons, different persons from different backgrounds, persons from different nationalities, So I had to be guiding her as to, what's the best things to do, what to say, what not to say, how to bite our tongue, stuff like that. Because remember, these are children in university, just starting university, some of them. So they're pretty young, right? And really wouldn't have experienced the work world. So I had much exposure. And if your child is like mine, she wouldn't have been in the work world. This is really her first experience in the work world, right? So, yeah, so she had to face racism. It's minimum wage that they earn, and when they go on the program, they're entitled, let me point out, to for at least 32 hours for the week. When she got there, they wanted to give her less hours than 32 hours. And I had to tell her, remind her that the companies that employ them signed a contract that they must give them at least 32 hours. So even they can't find work for the other workers, they must give the children who are on the work and travel 32 hours. So where she went, they didn't want to give her 32 hours, but it was based on her personality and the relationship or the rapport that she built with them prior to going. She was able to get 32 hours most of the times, and even hours after over that. However, even though she would have worked the hours, there still were challenges for her. She still had challenges to get paid. So let me just tell you a situation that she encountered. So she went to work. There is a clocking system. I don't know what exactly happened the day, but say she got to work 10. And when she got there, no one was there to open. Say they opened 10:30. She got in, but for whatever reason, she wasn't able to clock in herself. And when the supervisor came in, the supervisor asked another worker what time it is that my daughter got to work. And the other worker said, for argument's sake, 12 o'clock. And the supervisor used the time that the worker told her, even though my daughter was the first one there waiting for them to open the restaurant that she was working. So what I had to indicate to to explain to my daughter or tell her how to ensure that they can't cheat you of your time is when you get to work, take a picture of your face in front of the clock, the clock that they use to swipe in, or a clock itself, and to get a timestamp. So every time you go to work, you take a picture in front of some clock or something to get a timestamp. Your pictures would have timestamp, and when you leave, you take a picture, so you will always have proof that you did work, right? Another thing that so she had challenges in terms of proving her hours. So how that assisted her, there was a supervisor. And like every week, every fortnight her pay was short. Every fortnight her pay was short. I remember she had to pay. Not remember. She had to pay rent, transportation, and food. Right. So what happened is that the supervisor, there's a week, I said, for argument's sake, she worked 80 hours. The supervisor was saying, oh no, she worked 20 hours less than what she was saying she worked. And Marky, the supervisor, was not at work the week. And what she had to do was to pull up on her phone and show the days that she took her a picture of her coming into work and leaving work. And that is how she was able to prove that she did in fact work the hours. No, so that's just one thing to think about, right? That the children have to be proved. They have to think ahead of what may possibly happen, because these things do happen where they will say they never worked the hours that they worked, right? And then remember, they're young and they don't have anyone. You're not there to fight for them, so they have to pretty much defend themselves and prove their own cases, which shouldn't be the case. All right, so another thing that I'll point out to parents is ensure when you're sending your children, if they're going to be paying rent, before you even choose where they're going, look at what the rent is supposed to be, even though it can change, because that's what happened to my daughter. The rent changed. What they're going to be paying for rent, the hourly wage, cost to go back and forth from where they're going to be staying, so to see if it makes sense. if it makes financial sense. Because a lot of young people that went in the batch my daughter went with, it didn't work out for them because the rent, transportation, and food, they worked and paid everything right back, right? And remember, you have to pay an upfront cost to go on the program. So one, you have to ensure when your children are going, you have at least 2 weeks. You give them at least 2 weeks rent. Because remember, they wouldn't be paid the same time they go. So they'll work for 2 weeks, but they would still have rent to pay for those 2 weeks before they get paid. Ensure they have money to buy food. Look at the cost for transportation to ensure that they have enough money to go back and forth until they get their pay, right? So those are the things you look at before you send them. If where they're going, the transportation, the cost for food, and rent, if it really makes sense in terms of the hourly pay that they're getting. So what I learned while my daughter was away is that there are some partners that have, or some locations that you're able to go and they provide boarding for you. They give you a meal voucher and transportation. So you're in the cost that you would have paid up front, they wouldn't have to find out of their pay rent money, transportation money, and if they need to eat more than once, which I'm sure they'll eat more than once, you just the only thing you need to ensure they have is enough money to buy a meal or two, right? So no, that was a good deal. If I knew that existed, I would have suggested to my daughter. But I know why she wanted to go to the restaurant is because, or to a restaurant, because she wanted to be able to be a server. But as I said, that just didn't work. The workers there argued that she came from another country to come and take their jobs, and she wants to steal their money, and that was a whole. But yeah, so look into that. Getting a partner that or a location that your child may be able to not have to pay rent, food, and transportation out of their pay, right? Another thing that I would suggest to you is also, even in terms of traveling, things can happen when you're traveling. My daughter had a delay when she was going, and unfortunately the airline she traveled on was really not courteous to her, and she had to pay for a hotel out of her pocket because the flight was delayed, and it was a connecting flight on one ticket. And those of you who have ever worked with the airline or have knowledge about traveling, the airline is supposed to be responsible for them, but because they were young, they told them they would not take responsibility for them. But yeah, I did write in and I was compensated. I don't think I was compensated enough, or she was compensated enough, but she was compensated, right? So I even had to give her guidance in terms of that. So yes, so I don't have this video too long, so remember, work and travel, it's a good program, cultural exchange. Children are able to make money, but look at where you're sending them, the cost associated from in terms of the the partner that you're going to be going through, what's their cost. Shop around. Some are more expensive than others. Look at the cost living expense, rent, food, transportation, where they're going, and how much they're going to be paid, to see if it makes sense, right? And just bear in mind, a lot of them want to go to restaurants where they're able, or go to companies or businesses that you're able to get tips. But unfortunately, there are persons and there are states and racism still exists where they'll possibly not want you to be able to be in the children to be in those positions where they're able to get tips, right? So do your research. That is my biggest point. Do your research before you send your children on work and travel. All right, guys, so we've come to the end of another 40 and Beyond. I hope this was very informative. As I typically say, I ask you to like, subscribe, and share, and see you again. Bye, guys.